So I thought the smartest path was to get into it and start going. And if I found something along the way that seemed more interesting, then maybe I could jump out and just use the law degree as kind of an extra feather in my cap.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now here's our host, Justin West.
Alrighty, and we are live and we are back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers who are at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the various legal fields and jurisdictions, because if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm joined with Matthew Wasinger. He goes by the name Matt, and he runs the eponymous law firm, WasingerLawOffice.com, down in Florida. He focuses a lot on real estate and estate planning, and we're going to be talking with him about all the ins and outs of real estate law, estate planning, and what separates him from a lot of his clients. As always, we're going to jump over first and take a look at his website here. And this is WasingerLawOffice.com. You can visit this site. Obviously, we'll have links down in the show notes, as we always do, WasingerLawOffice.com. And he actually runs this with his wife, Victoria. He tends to do the real estate and the estate planning. I think she does some entertainment law, so we might even talk about her very briefly today. But this is his site. And again, you can reach it by going down below. And of course, there's his number if you're anywhere in the Orlando area, 407-308-0991. To get started, of course, we're always going to read from one of our sponsors. Our first sponsor is a new one today, and it's GrooveFunnels. If you like spending $5,000 on a new website and you love $79 a month bills to host on a platform that allows you to sell your products to other clients and people, well, then you can stick with doing what you're doing. But if you like free, I mean legitimately free, like I like free, then you should look into Groove Pages. Groove Pages, I personally recommend it. I've used it for over a year. They're still in a beta launch right now, and it is an all-in-one website, funnel, and sales platform. And it comes to us from internet marketing guru Mike Filsaime. He's been behind a lot of things, including the Ever webinar technology that a lot of people use out there. You can visit and sign up and get a free account with GrooveFunnels by going to theattorneypost.com/groove. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. It is a full-service website. You can build up to 3 websites. You can sell an unlimited number of products. You can attract people as affiliates, and there's no fees to do any of that. Obviously, they do have a lot more stuff on the back end. They're going to be adding in a full webinar and video service and other things, and some of those things will have a cost to them. But the basic platform to make a website and buy and sell is totally free. Highly, highly recommended. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove. Link to that below in the description as well. theattorneypost.com/groove. All right, and I am back with Matthew. Matthew, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I am doing good. Thank you. Well, Matthew, again, he focuses on real estate and estate planning, particularly in and around the Orlando area, though he does practice law all throughout Florida, if I understand correctly. He is the founder of Wasinger Law Office, PLLC, and provides Florida families, individuals, and businesses all around the Winter Park, College Park, Delaney Park, and Orlando area with estate planning, trusts, wealth preservation, and guardianship for minors as well. He also provides real estate legal services, including closings, negotiations, and investment property transactions. He got his JD from Stetson University College in Gulfport in 2008, and he's got more than a decade of experience practicing law in and around the Florida area. And he can relate to, all sorts of various aspects when it comes to estate planning, real estate, legal transactions that his clients face. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I also happen to know that he's more or less from my neck of the woods because he grew up in Hays, Kansas, little tiny town right in the middle of the United States. If you were to balance the United States on the head of a pen, Hays would be very close to the center of the map. So question number one I always like to ask first, Matthew, is what did I miss?
You covered the majority of it. We cover the entire state of Florida for cases, especially real estate, but do estate planning and entertainment law, intellectual property. My wife handles that all over the state, but really focus on the Orlando area where we're based and where we live.
All right, awesome. So let's start general as we always do. What got you into law? Did you just always know that you wanted to be an attorney? Was it something that kind of came about as a surprise to you? And then how did you know, particularly once you got into law, that you wanted to do estate law and real estate law?
Well, I didn't always know. My dad is an attorney. He is a real estate and oil and gas attorney in Hays, Kansas, has a title company as well. And my uncle is also an attorney. He's up in Michigan. does more corporate, retired now, but did a lot more corporate law. So it was just something I knew about, something I knew how to get into, and something I knew. One thing was I kind of always wanted to run my own business, and it seemed like, and I know there's a million ways to do that, but my young mind saw that as a quicker path because I was familiar with it, saw how it was done. So I got to law school, or I got to undergrad, and I was trying to figure out something to do. And about my junior year, I decided, you know what, I don't have a strong desire to go into something different, or to get into a specific type of business. And I thought, why not try my hand at law school? And that's how I ended up in law school. And even through law school, I wasn't sure I was going to practice. I wasn't sure if I was going to take it and use it as a base to get into something else. And eventually, graduated in 2008, in the summer of 2008. So that was right when the economy was really starting to struggle.
Yeah,
so
there's a whole bunch of real estate issues, in fact.
Yeah, that was part of it. So the job market for everything was low, but attorneys was kind of limited even still. So I thought the smartest path was to get into it and start going. And if I found something along the way that seemed more interesting, then maybe I could jump out and just use the law degree as kind of a an extra feather in my cap. But once I started practicing, really liked it, and found a career for myself.
Gotcha. So what led you, you settled in Florida because that's where you went to Stetson University? Is that right? Is that what led you to Florida, and why you guys stayed in Florida and didn't come back to Kansas?
Well, yeah. So interestingly enough, when I was applying to law schools, I was applying all over the northeast, the common schools. And then I realized I hate cold weather. I absolutely hate cold weather. I was tired of it. And all I wanted to do was be somewhere warm and by the water. That was general. So then I started focusing on law schools that fit that. And Stetson, who happens to every year, I don't know where they are now, every other year or so, they're the #1 trial advocacy school in the country. And I thought, well, if I want to be a litigator, maybe this is a good place to go. I applied, got in, and campus is Gulfport, right on the edge of St. Petersburg, Florida, and beautiful, right near the water. And so that fit all of it. And then I got down here and didn't really want to leave. So I've been here, and my wife actually grew up in Orlando, so it made it an easier transition. But a lot of the people that I met down in law school, and a lot of the people that I know were from Florida, and it made it a kind of an easier transition to stay here when I decided to do so. Yeah.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I can overall understand the trajectory. We definitely have warm weather out here in Kansas, as you know, but we definitely have a lot of the cold as well. So,
yeah.
So let's start a little more general again. Obviously, for the last year, everyone's life has kind of been off because of the pandemic, and of course, the response to the pandemic. And as our longtime listeners know, I talk to attorneys all over the country and even internationally, and it's kind of interesting to hear the experience that everyone has. You're not the first attorney I've talked to in Florida, but I've only talked to a couple, and I know that Florida in general had a slightly more libertarian or libertine approach to the pandemic and the shutdowns, as opposed to, say, a California, right? So how has the pandemic affected you, your firm, and your clients?
Well, even with the Florida being a little more open and a little less locked down, the court system, specifically for the real estate and litigation side that I handle, really slowed down, really started pushing stuff off, canceling hearings, starting doing Zoom hearings. But that whole process in and of itself created a timeline that pushed things out, because they had to implement rules for whether they were going to do trials, whether they're going to do evidentiary hearings through Zoom hearings, and all the different problems that brings along. So even though Florida businesses were not closed down as much, especially the litigation portion of the practice that in the real estate field was just stretched out. Everything was kind of continued and paused. The estate planning, luckily, being transactional, was an easy fix for us, because we kind of set up our business to be online friendly from the very beginning. So we could, try to work anywhere, go to where our clients were, or just, be able to not be stuck in the office all the time. So, clients might have had a little bit more difficult time, implementing Zoom into their lives, but it was really kind of a smooth transition for us, having meetings with clients via Zoom because we're kind of doing that already. Not obviously to the extent that this brought in, but
Right.
but now it's it's kind of smoother for everyone, and it makes it just a little bit more convenient, especially
Yeah.
if your clients both work and they have a short amount of time to kind of meet quickly and they want to do so, but have that a little bit of an in-person effect. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of some of the changes that have come about from the pandemic. And I've talked to a lot of attorneys that really, really like the idea of being able to do some sorts of Zoom hearings and depositions even and whatnot. Of course, the actual trials, I think everyone's kind of on the fence about whether that's a good idea or not, because you can't really do eye
right.
contact and read the jury and everything else. But I do think in general, I mean, it's really what made the podcast reboot as possible. So it is what it is. So again, you guys do real estate law and estate planning, and you were talking about the fact that you guys have a few things that really separate you from a lot of the other estate planning firms out there. Can you tell us, Matt, a little bit more about what makes you guys unique from 99% of the other estate firms that do estate planning, et cetera?
Yeah. So kind of to circle back with one of the reasons I got into when I started practicing law in estate planning was something I was into. I mean, I've always loved real estate. Grew up fixing up apartments and things like that as for odd jobs, and so that was a natural kind of progression, just being involved in the real estate field. But estate planning was something I knew because growing up, my dad and his brothers and sisters got into a huge probate estate fight when my grandparents passed. So I lived through firsthand seeing what this conflict, being in court and conflict, and how long it drags on, and the stress and the emotional toll it takes on people, and how it's a value. It's a value to everybody. And a lot of people don't think of estate planning like that. They think you need to be older, that you need to have a lot of wealth. But that's really not the case. If you have anything that you want to pass down, the only way you can avoid getting stuck in court in Florida, probate, which is the court version of a lawsuit against yourself to determine what assets you have and who gets what, including your creditors. The only way to avoid that is setting up an estate plan, and specifically a trust. But no one really knows that for sure. They think if they have a will, they're fine. But where there's a will, there's a probate. And Florida probate lasts anywhere from 9 to 16 months on average, sometimes longer, just because how busy Florida is, how often you can get into hearings and things like that. So when I started practicing and got into estate planning because of my own experiences, one of the things I realized was there was a way people practice that seemed like it had some holes in it. For instance, not everyone does. We do all flat fee, agreed to in advance. There's never any surprise. You're not calling our office and getting a bill for 0.1 minutes on the phone about some question. We do it all flat fee, agreed to in advance. The second part was, most of the time when you come in for an estate planning meeting with an attorney, they'll tell you what you need, and then they'll draft the documents, have you sign it, and they'll give you a list of instructions on what you need to do to go fund your estate plan, which is transfer title to those assets to the trust, or however you've said, change your beneficiary designations on your life insurance and accounts like that. And that was it. It was a transactional meeting. That was, hey, good luck. Call us if you have any questions. Here's some instructions. Go on your way. I thought that might be malpractice, because I thought that, if you hadn't put everything in there, what you've got is a very expensive paperweight. You basically got a big booklet of documents that if you don't update it, you don't put everything where it's supposed to be and designate everything the way it's supposed to be designated, it doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
In fact, 9 times out of 10, the people that bring me a trust to look at or their estate plan, they've either got part of it put together properly or none of it, or it's from so long ago, the laws changed so much that it doesn't even do what they needed it to do. So we thought there was better ways to do that. And so what we do is a kind of a 3-meeting plan, where you come in, we focus on educating the client. We focus on telling you what happens to your assets, what happens to your family members, especially if you have minor children. what happens in the situations when one of you passes, when both of you pass, and we outline what happens. And then we design a plan with your input, what's most important to you, and explain exactly how much everything is going to cost in that meeting. So we focus on that meeting, explaining and designing your plan, exactly what you need. You're choosing your plan, essentially. We're just giving you the information to do so. We're not telling you, you need this, you need that, because sometimes there might be super wealthy people that do not care about probate. Sometimes there's people that have a small estate, but know that if they go through probate, it's going to cost their family more money and time, than it might eat up everything they're trying to leave to them. Right. So there's really no right way or wrong way to do this. And there's not a dollar amount that says that you have to do X, Y, or Z. So we try to focus on educating our clients. But after that meeting, you come back for a signing meeting. We have a signing thing, and we only give you what you need to go transfer your assets into the trust, but we don't give you the rest of it. We have a third meeting where you come back and get that, and where we're pounding you if you're not doing it on your own, or available constantly for you to answer any questions and how to get that done. So we make sure that it's done when you come back for that third meeting before you get all the rest of your paperwork and everything. So we're kind of forcing the issue and making sure it's done. And then the other way, Florida has $2 billion in unclaimed property. Oh, wow. In its coffers. It's because people don't outline their assets. They don't make sure they don't even remember everything that they have. And me as your attorney, I can only help with what you give me. So what we do is we inventory their assets and give them that inventory and tell them where it is, what the account numbers are, and we keep copies and they keep copies if they want us to keep copies. In that way, nothing gets lost to the State Department of Unclaimed Property. And then we also base, to ensure that we're constantly being updated. We build in at least a 3-year free review with every estate plan we do, because the law is going to change and your life is going to change. So we want to make sure we keep that stuff updated along the way. We're trying to build a lifelong relationship, not a transactional one that you never hear from us again. Right. We want to make sure that this works. We want you to come back. And three years is about the average, but depending on people's ages, what they have gone on in their life, we'll move that up, to do it more often. But that's kind of the goal, to make sure not only do we know what assets you have, they're titled correctly, and that we update as you go. So if you have changes in your life, your plan that you've made for yourself, or if something changes in your life, you want to change your plan, we can do so, and we keep it moving. And it's not just something you set and forget, which is kind of the general way most people approach that.
Gotcha. So you really are doing more of a holistic approach. You're trying to make sure that people are taken care of. And again, as you said, not merely transactional, but relationship wise, you're establishing that you're caring for these people, and you're kind of taking them under your aegis for a longer term to make sure that they're taken care of. I think that's great. That's really that's huge. We'll jump back over here really quickly and just take a look at your site. Obviously, this is the estate planning. You do real estate as well. And it looks like you got a few things, including the top 6 guardianship mistakes that people make, that people can grab as well. So that sounds like an interesting thing. What's one of those mistakes, if people are interested?
Well, one of the big ones that we try to point out is that if they name long-term guardians and they're not within an hour, so typically about 30 minutes, really, you need to have another step, maybe another person, what we call our kids protection plan, short-term guardians, because the police, let's say you guys go out for dinner and you don't come home, and your kids are home with a babysitter. Eventually, either the police are going to show up or the babysitter is going to call. Who are they supposed to call? Well, we give them instructions. And also, because the police are going to have to take your kids to Child Protective Services if they can't find somebody close by that's got authority to take them, they'll end up with Child Protective Services, or stay with the police until someone who's responsible can show up. So we added short-term guardians into that list. So friends, neighbors, close relatives that are close by that can have authority for that short period of time until the long-term permanent guardians can show up. Gotcha. So we built that in, was another change to kind of cover the whole. And we also make sure all these guardians know that. It's not only just listing guardians, it's talking to them, making sure they have the documentation to show up and say, hey, I'm responsible for this child and I can take care of them. And that way they don't spend any time, even if it's an hour or a couple of days in a child protective services situation, or just even at the police station until someone shows up. So that's one of the big mistakes that people naming guardians make, is not notifying them and not covering the short-term aspect of that as well.
Gotcha. That's good advice. I've never actually considered like kind of having a short-term guardian or an immediate guardian until the intended guardians, because my wife's parents live out in Pennsylvania. We live in Kansas, it's 1,000 miles away, obviously, and they could hop on an airplane and be here pretty quickly. But I think it's very important to have somebody in mind that could really could help out in a pinch, especially as many people are dispersed throughout the world, and lots of family members are far, and oftentimes people can't drop everything at the drop of a hat to come in and take over. So it's really good advice.
Things don't big issues don't typically happen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's get to know you a little bit more. I'm a big fan of understanding who somebody is by seeing how they handle both success and failure. And as our longtime listeners know, I'm a firm believer that failure is not really failure unless you refuse to learn something from the process. But as long as you learn something from a failure, it kind of becomes a slow burn win. So Matt, can you tell our listeners about a time that within the practice of law, you did something that you would consider to be a failure, but then what you learned from it? And this can be anything from you forgot you filled out the wrong form, or you missed a form, or somebody, forgot to list some assets, and you learned, hey, I need to make sure I ask about these things because nobody ever checks on these assets, whatever it happens to be. But can you let us know about a time that you suffered something akin to a failure, and what it taught you, and how you carry that forward in helping your clients?
Well, I can give you a couple, but one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is, it was actually a real estate case. It's not even the estate planning case. It was I hired a third-party vendor for my firm to handle an issue for my client. They screwed up pretty badly, which left me with a several $100,000 potential. And I guess it is a lawsuit if my client really wanted to go after me, because
Right.
Even though I didn't personally screw up, the people I hired screwed up, and I was the contracted one with my client. So I panicked, but after about 20-30 minutes of trying to sit there and thinking it out, I kind of did what I was, growing up doing, is you make a mistake, you go admit it, and you go try to fix it. So I called my client and I said, look, here's the deal. This happened. Can't do anything about it now, but I've got a plan. And it was they were about to lose a property that was around, over $500,000. And so I said, you can get mad and just sue me and we'll go from there. I said, which I prefer you didn't. Yeah. Also, I think I've lined up an investor who would be willing to kind of help fix this and at least get you guys back to whole. Now, you don't have the ability to make the money that they thought they were going to make on this property, but at least you're not out of this property. This was really a massive deal. I mean, I was sweating bullets, but the they loved the investor idea. They didn't even want to keep the property. They were just trying to get it and get out of it. And so I solved that problem by just doing what you should do. And I think in any situation is admit the mistake and go do your best to fix it. And then that's all you can do, because I mean, there's a million different ways you can handle that. You can push it off and claim it and let everyone try to pass the blame. But I was almost certain that once I explained this to my client, I was completely out as their lawyer. But I haven't. They've been with me for over 10 years now, and that was, I think, 2 or 3 years into the relationship, so it was still relatively new, so it's worked out really well.
Oh, that's awesome! You definitely took a fail and turned it into a win. That's awesome. Okay, so let's put the shoe on the other foot, though. Tell us about some of the things, and that may be one of them, obviously, but tell us about some of the things you've done that you're most proud of. Some of the biggest wins that you've had that really you put the wind in your sail, so to speak, and make you glad that you're doing what you're doing.
Well, one of the things was when I started my own firm. This was now almost 9.5 years ago. I left a really respectable firm in Orlando, and I landed what I thought was a big client on my own, and trying to build around this client and go from there. And especially in certain types of law, there's no one can guarantee you a certain amount of legal work, because typically you're reacting instead of, like, which is part of the reason why I love estate planning, is you're planning ahead instead of just reacting to bad situations. You're not always cleaning up messes, hopefully, if you're doing it right. And they promised me all of this work, certain everything aside from a 100% guarantee, we'll pay you the money even if we don't have it, type of thing.
Yeah.
And for the first 3 months, almost 4, I got literally nothing. So I've started this firm, left a pretty cushy job, where I really liked the firm, really liked the partners. I got along great with everyone, thought it was a great situation. And I was sitting there with not a lot to do. I just kept thinking, well, this might be the shortest opening and closing of a firm that it's maybe ever lived. I have to look it up, but I'm not sure it could go much worse than this. But it forced me to hustle. It forced me to change the way I was approaching things. It got me to start really pushing out there, trying to get new clients and finding new ways to get clients and new ways to network and new ways to show off what we were doing, what my firm was doing. Well, I thought it was better. And it was a tough first year, but all of the stuff that happened during that, and the ways that I had to pivot and redo things and look at things differently and try to just hustle to make it keep going until that work came in. Eventually that work did come in, but it just wasn't set up to go a whole, 4 or 5 months with literally nothing coming into it. So that was one of the biggest wins that I can think of. I was convinced. I was like, I just made the big mistake here, and now I'm in a lot of trouble. But it worked out. Obviously, still going 9.5 years later. But the thing that I feel best about now is one of the things we do in our 3 estate planning meeting is, because we're trying to take, as you said perfectly, a holistic approach to handling our clients. We do a family interview at the end with all the family members if you want, but really the 2 people that are setting up the estate plan, and have them leave videos for their family members if they want to, or each other. And this way, I don't know if you've ever heard people that, especially our parents who only had answering machines and not voicemails of things and stuff like that, wishing they had something to hear their parents' voices or to see, remember what they were like, just getting a general sense of it. Yeah. So we incorporated that into our final meeting, our binder presentation meeting, where we give them everything, they've got everything set up, and then they do that. We give them the option to do that video, and almost all of them take it. Some of them fight along the way, but once they're done, they are so happy. They're so relieved, and they're people that I know are not huggers are giving me hugs, pre-COVID anyway.
Oh yeah. Now they give you elbow bumps or whatever.
Yeah. Fist bumps, elbow bumps. That reminds me of why I'm doing this, why it is a good thing, because people are relieved. They just feel better. They feel like that they've done something. They've got their family taken care of, and so that's probably my biggest thing that I feel that really keeps me going these days is that kind of reaction to a service that someone's paying for. They're seeing the value of it.
Absolutely. Well, as somebody who's an entrepreneur himself, I can say that, especially the first part of what you said, I can 100% get behind. I know the hustle. I know what it's like starting out and like, what am I doing? Was this a big mistake?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to go, tail between my legs, crawling back and trying to get my job back or whatever? So I have nothing but utter respect for anybody who sets out on their own and then succeeds, because, a lot of small businesses fail. But clearly you're not one of them. I'm not either, which is good. But I get that 100%. I really do. So that's awesome. So here in a minute, we're going to have some fun. We're going to time travel, and I'm going to give you my magic wand. It's actually an InkJoy pen, but I love this pen. It writes really well. It's not a sponsor. I just am a big fan of InkJoy pens, as our longtime listeners know. But this magical InkJoy pen can allow you to change something, Matt. It allows you to change anything in the law that affects either you or your clients. So I want you to think about that for a minute. What it is you would change in the law that affects either you or your clients. And again, I make the offer, I can upgrade it to a genie lamp if you really need to make a lot of changes. But think of something that you would change in the law. While you're thinking about that, let's jump back over. And again, we're going to take a look at your website one more time. Again, this is wasingerlawoffice.com. That's wasingerlawoffice.com. Link is down below in the description and the show notes. And if you click on the various tabs up here, you'll find he does have a blog and some FAQs, but he also has, estate planning, real estate law. And again, that's where you can find things like his 6 guardianship mistakes. So very interesting stuff there. Highly recommend you guys check that out. We're going to jump over and read one more sponsor really quickly. And our next sponsor is Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers. If you're a small business owner, you know that being on page 1 of Google is important, but maybe you're afraid to work with a search engine optimization company because you know that SEO is both expensive and slow. Well, it doesn't have to be, not anymore. Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers forces you to page 1 of Google naturally and safely and legally through the power of the news media. Rocket SEO utilizes national news media campaigns across a gamut of news sites that simply rank instantly. With Rocket SEO, you can boost your website's ranking in Google in 1 week or less with a simple system that leverages the power of major media companies, news sites and affiliates of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, as well as local news sources from the Boston Herald to the Sacramento Bee and all stops in between in order to put you on page 1 of Google in under a week, oftentimes 2 or 3 times on page 1, and oftentimes for dozens of keywords. To learn more, you can email press@hundredsofcustomers.com or visit hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. That's hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. All righty. So, Matthew, where to time travel first? Because time travel is lots of fun. If we were to go back to 2008, you're fresh out of law school and you come face to face with younger Matt, what advice would you give yourself, other than, of course, buy a lot of Bitcoin?
Yeah, right.
Trust me on this. I know it's only $20 right now, but you're going to want it.
Right. Yeah.
Other than that, what advice would you give yourself, or of course to any aspiring attorney or burgeoning attorney who's got a new practice? What advice would you give yourself starting out?
It'd be 2 bits, really. The first is just relax. Like and as you get older, you start seeing kind of the patterns of how the worst thing that you keep worrying about either rarely happens or isn't as bad as you think it's going to be. I don't want to. I'm not trying to minimize anyone that's had really, really bad things happen to, because I know that does. But we all think everything is going to be the most important thing that's ever happened to us, and it's not always, especially as you get older and you see that backwards. So the first would be relax. The second is, if it's not singing to you, pivot, go do something else. Whether it's a particular area of law or it's being a lawyer itself. We spend a lot of money, a lot of time going through law school, and you kind of feel like you have to do it. Or at least I know the majority of people feel like, well, I know, but I did all this, I might as well keep doing it. Don't. Because it's any job that you have, any career that you set up, it's a grind. It's a lot of work. Even if you enjoy it, it's still a lot of work. But if you don't, you're just going to be miserable. And the law is an easy place with the firms that have billable hour requirements and litigation and the stress that brings and some of that other stuff. Pivot, go do something else. It's, you've got a law degree. It can give you a feather in your cap for something else, but don't get stuck. Don't be miserable doing it, because it's not worth it.
Good advice. Follow your passion as much as you can. Obviously, you got to put food on the table somehow, but
right, exactly.
Follow your passion. I like that. And again, I think a lot of the people I talk to run their own firms. You've got that entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's a guiding post for a lot of us. So I 100% agree with that. All right, so now magic time. I give you the pen.
Right.
With this pen, you can change with a single stroke a law. You can get rid of it. You can tweak it. You can abolish it. Something that affects you or your clients. It could be something as simple as the stupid paperwork that you have to have filled out in triplicate, or it can be a law that you think is unjust that makes things harder than they should be. What would you change, Matt, if you could change something about the law that affects you or your clients?
I think the number one thing I would do is, and I know this is rooting against my own self-interest to a little bit, because estate tax is why estate planners exist, but getting rid of the estate tax for a spouse specifically, getting rid of having to pay any of that, that's something I would get away from, because I understand why it exists. I understand the point of passing it down to the kids when they inherit everything that their parents have had. But the spouse who's been there with it, you've paid your taxes on this. You've paid taxes on everything that you've built all of the course of your life, and then you're hit again, or you have to find sometimes an expensive way to avoid it, whether that's the state estate tax or the federal estate tax. Luckily, Florida doesn't have a state version, but a lot of other states do, and it's just, I hate it. I hate the fact that you're whoever is the surviving spouse deals with all this and then has to find a way to avoid taxes on stuff they've already paid taxes on. So I know there's a lot of attorneys out there yelling again, no, don't do that. But that's what I would do. Give the surviving spouse a break.
You're not the first attorney I've talked to who's magically shot themselves in the foot, but they did it to make the world a better place. So I don't feel bad about that at all. And you're kind of preaching to the choir on this one. I'm very, very much anti-tax in general. Obviously, they're a little bit makes sense. I understand the government has to run. We didn't even have an income tax until 1913 or whatever, and we functioned okay. Sometimes I wonder if we couldn't go back there, but that may just be my inner libertarian talking.
I understand.
So, well, Matthew, thank you very much for meeting with me today. I know that you're busy and you've got a lot of things to do. You've got irons in the fire, so to speak. Before we go, though, I do like to let my guests have the last word. So before we go, do you have any final thoughts for anyone who has made it this far into the video? Any parting words for our listeners or for people who may be potential clients?
I guess what I would say is you're never, especially if you're young, if you've got young kids at home, estate planning is essential. The only way you're going to protect what you have and make sure it goes to who you want it to and the way you want it to is through estate planning. So don't think you have to reach a certain age or have a certain amount of money. If you want to protect what you have for your kids or your wife, or go do some estate planning and don't DIY it. As much as there might be a cheap option out there, there's a reason why they're a cheap option. Yeah. You can't cover all those holes. You can't make sure that you're thinking of all the ins and outs of everything that happens. So, just go meet with an attorney and meet with a couple if you don't feel like you've got a good match, because that's the only way you're going to make sure that you protect what you have.
That's great advice. Absolutely. And again, the tagline of our show always has been, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So always seek out a competent attorney. So, well, thank you, Matt, for very, very much for meeting with me today and for being on the podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. And again, I learned something new. I love it when I learn something new, talking about the guardianship and the concept of having an intermediary guardian, essentially, while the primary guardians are able to take over. So it's a fascinating concept that I've never really considered. So it's something I'm going to have to do more research into myself, and hopefully any of our listeners who find themselves in that situation, if you've got children, I've got 5, look into that, because that is something that you know about. And again, if you're in the state of Florida, particularly if you're around Orlando, I happen to know a guy who could help you out.
Right. Well, thank you for having me. And before you go, I will say we have a kids protection plan where you can name your own guardians online. It doesn't cover all your holes, but you could use it as well, because it covers what state you're in. So it's wlo.kidsprotectionplanning.com.
And WLO.
.kidsprotectionplan.com. And if you want to go to a quick way to get there, you can go to the blog. Oh, there you got it. You're moving fast.
Hey, there we go. We'll include a link down below for that as well. That's a great resource for people. So if you made it this far into the video, look down below and you'll also find a link to wlo.kidsprotectionplan.com. Obviously, if you're listening, you can just type that in. But that's a great resource to have as well. So that's awesome. That's really good.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much as well. And we'll definitely be in touch. To everyone else, thank you for watching or listening to the Attorney Post. As always, I've been chatting with Matthew Wasinger of the Wasinger Law Firm, the firm that bears his name. That's WasingerLawOffice.com down in Orlando, Florida. As always, this podcast does not constitute itself legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter that you need help with. However, if you live in Florida and you have an issue with real estate law or estate planning, I can highly recommend. Having had this conversation, Matt and his law firm, he seems to have a great head on his shoulders. Highly, highly recommended. I am your host, Justin West, as always, here on the Attorney Post, where we meet with attorneys and share their insights with you to help you be better informed about all aspects of the law. Because again, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. You've been listening to this here, probably on YouTube or one of our various podcast channels. We are syndicated on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all of the main platforms. As always, we do appreciate a like, a share, a subscribe. You can also find us on theattorneypost.com. And until next time, stay legal, stay safe. Bye-bye, guys.